The Lovers is the third card in the sequence of the Path of Truth, which began with the Emperor, continued with the Hierophant, and is now in its third phase with the Lovers. And of course, the Lovers card stands for the principle of love. But that's where the simplicity ends, because we don't know what love is. We have used this word in so many ways that it just doesn't have the same clarity as many, in fact most other words. We just don't know what it is. And various people have tried to define it. Dostoevsky, in his famous Brothers Karamazov work, suggested that it's the emotion you feel when you want to be with the particular person more than anyone else. Now, that's a nice place to start, but it just doesn't check out. A certain kind of love is like that, romantic love. And these Lovers cards are kind of referring to the romantic love for most people. But why do we align this card in the series of Path of Truth? Let's first look at that, just to get a sense of what love means to us. We have the Emperor, whose power comes from sovereignty. And that sovereignty in our normal way of thinking is over land and resources and other people and kingdoms and so on. That's what the Emperor is in our normal use of words. And we find that the Hierophant, the spiritual leader, is actually capable of wielding more power, more influence, even than emperors, because people believe in belief rather more than fame and fortune and wealth. And yet we come to the Lovers card, the third in the sequence of the Path of Truth, and we find that the truth is that love trumps all. That's the truth. Whatever we may think about worldly power of emperor, spiritual power of the Pope, here we have the true power, and that's the power of Cupid. Cupid's job is to keep the species alive by making appropriate people fancy each other into a sexual connection that gives rise to babies. Anything else that we want to impute and lay on to that formula is romantic. And that might not be wrong, it's just that's what it is. And that's the truth of the matter. And until we face that, we are living in a delusional state. So, for example, when two lovers meet, young lovers, Romeo and Juliet, under the age of 16, both of them, they will die for one another, and they did. And they set out to do that because their love was overpowering to the level of denying them the survival instinct. And when we have that feeling as young people, we know what that means. We would die for love. As the moth dies for the love of the flame. This is one of the Sufi images. And indeed, the high-level adherent to spiritual love would die for God. And the death that we're talking about in that case is the death of self. And the moth is immolating itself in order to know the ecstasy of the flame. And that's the model here that we're looking at for the lovers, where you forget the self in order to lose yourself in the love that your lover stimulates. This level of love on a spiritual plane is called ishq in Sufism. And the idea is that we remember God deeply within us. And that memory is very deeply unconscious. We have no consciousness of what state we were in before incarnation. But we do have some kind of body memory of it, or deeper than that. We have some unconscious memory that actually there is a place, there is somewhere, some when, that we're once again reunited with God. And that feeling of love, the kind of love that you would die for, and you would surrender your ego for, that love is overwhelmingly more powerful than anything else, even though we've forgotten about it. Now, this is the fundamental teaching of the Lover's card, is that we would give everything up to know God's love, the love in God, the love of God. It's not comparable to anything else. It's overwhelmingly destructive of the ego. It kills the sense we have of being important or special. Now, the process we go through in order to get even close to that sense of remembering love is a very special choice we make in life. There aren't that many things that we can do to remember, to re-embody our knowledge of the love of God. And one of the redeeming features, in fact, is probably the only one, is that we dance and that we know music as a species. The other species don't know about music, and their dances are elaborate rituals for attracting a mate. We actually know music and we know dance, and we know the states that we can get into through the use of these mysterious gifts that come from another world. Now, of course, not everybody is a practitioner of dance and music, and so they don't know it. They think that dance is this and music is that, and they don't know what it really is. And it's not really until you've dedicated your life to the study of music that you can understand it's a spiritual mystery. And it's not appropriate to go through this in much depth in a video. It's not something I can communicate with words. That's the whole point, that music speaks its own language, and it's a language without words. So perhaps I need to demonstrate it a little bit on the guitar. It's not possible for me to find that state of being that I get into when I'm playing music in any other way. So I'm quite lucky in the sense that I've had that privilege of being able to find the time and so on to dedicate that study. For others, there must be something equivalent in your life. And it might be the garden, or it might be parenting or childminding or something. Each of us finds a way to experience a state of being that's lost in beauty. And the beauty that we're talking about is a feeling of oneness. I remember a time when I was sitting beside a river and the light was from the sun just on the rippling water, and it was entering my eyes in this very mystical way, and I just knew myself to be a part of it all. Not more than, not less than God itself. that immersion in the experience of love, oneness, not love. There's I and thou, and I quite like you as long as you're being nice to me. That's not really what we're talking about here. There's this sense of wonder and beauty and gentleness and stillness and peace, as well as excitement and sparkle. It's so hard to find words, and this is why music is required, and poetry perhaps, to hint at something that we cannot verbalize otherwise. Now, whatever it is that I'm finding through music and you're finding in your own way, that needs to be practiced. It's not as though any of us is denied the experience. I'm sure all of us can find that experience somehow. The question is whether or not we practice this feeling. In other words, we revisit that state of being as a way of life. We make sure it's a part of our lives. Now, for me, I enter that state every day. I make sure I play my music every day, because I want to remember love every day. And this word remember, like member again, and a member is a part of your body. So you remember, you realign the physical body with the state of being. And we can talk more of states of being, how we can learn how to replicate them and find them and have them accessible to our will. We can choose states of being. We'll talk more about that when we come to the Chariot. But the state of love, to revisit that state of being, that's primary. And we have to remember to do that, and to do that frequently, almost as a daily practice, so that we keep it alive and we feed it. And when we do that, then it's there. It's a part of who we are, an accessible part. And it does not depend upon a partner. There's no need for them to have an object of your love and to be devastated if that love were to be ended. And this is the mystery of the Lover's card. It is not that when we are one with a lover, in other words, the lover and I are a unit, that we can experience love. That's not the deepest mystery. The deepest mystery is the reverse of that. When we find love within ourselves as a state that does not depend upon anything external, and really only then will we know how to relate using that state of being. In other words, the partnership you have with your lover is an expression of the love that you have for yourself, if it's sustainable and genuine. And if it's not, if you're dependent upon the other for that feeling of love, then that's a very vulnerable state of being, because that comes to an end. But if you actually internalize it as something of you that you can access, and then you can present that whomever you are with, then it's yours. And that's the power of the card of the Lovers. And that's the truth. When we have that love, it's much bigger and more important even than our spirituality, even than our worldly power. The truth is that love is the only thing that matters when you can access it. And that love very often shows itself through relationship, very often shows itself through beauty, but it's love, it's deeper than everything. And if we want to understand the mystery of love, we will not do that in relationship, even the relationship we have with our children, and our parents, and our lovers, even those profound connections. That's not quite the mystery of love. There's a deeper mystery, which is spiritual experience. And we practice that And eventually all your spiritual practice leads to that. And you find that through love, truth is sustainable. And actually you also find that without love, truth is unsustainable. So we start to get this sense of why truth and love are connected, how truth is a requirement for love, and love is a requirement for truth. They're necessary conditions in each other's states of being. And therefore, you can call up an equivalence here, that truth and love have equivalence on some level. And so for us to distinguish between love and truth as if they were different, this starts to become philosophically rather difficult to maintain. If each depends upon the other, there is no love without truth. You think that through. If you're not being truthful with your lover, do you love them? Do they love you? If you cannot be accepted in who you are, how is that love? If you cannot accept them in the truth of who they are, how is that love? It's not sacred love, is it? So if you can't tell the truth, then it's not love. And it requires love to accept someone in all of their naked truth, because truth is sometimes dark. That's the whole thing, that we have to accept the darkness in someone in order to prove our love and test our love. So the Lover's card is really a very profound spiritual state of being, where you have the courage to know truth with another. And if that other at first is God, and eventually it must become that, then it shows in your relationships with things and people and states of being, because it's all and everything. It's God, it's godliness.